All right, we'll call the September meeting of the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission to order. Maggie, would you care to call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Burr, I'm gonna ask you to unmute because I have it set so we can. Yeah, okay. Commissioner Neil Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner William Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Joanne Bush,
Here.
Commissioner Eddie Glover. Commissioner Eddie Glover, Commissioner Bruce Leggett. Commissioner Bruce Leggett, Commissioner Roy Reeves. Commissioner Roy Reeves, Commissioner Bill Pointer,
Here.
Commissioner Will Brewer,
Here.
Commissioner Jamie Byrd.
Present.
I do believe we have a quorum. Everyone should have received a copy of the minutes. Had a chance to review those. If there's any additions or corrections. If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving down to business, we've got the director's report.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chairman. In my director's report, first I'll touch on, that we worked in conjunction with the Arkansas Development Finance Authority to sell 120 million in revenue bonds. This is for our state revolving fund program that we'll use for water and wastewater projects. So it's been a long time since we sold bonds in that program, but we did that. I think the last bond sale was actually 2011. So we did that successfully, so that'll help us with cash flow with all the projects that are coming to us. That way we have cash on hand to push out funds as all these communities are constructing. We also issued our final permit with our non-riparian permit for this for the Saline Regional Public Water Authority. If you recall at the last meeting, I mentioned that we had a public hearing on that. We had 27 people that showed up that day, but we took all the comments from the hearing and then made our decision to issue the permit. So it'll be a 50-year permit for them to withdraw water out of the Washoe River for drinking water sources for communities and county. We did issue that permit. We have also requested two one-year extensions on our feral hog grants that we have. So we receive federal funds to do feral hog work. We have a pilot program, which was a 12-county pilot. And that's with NRCS. And so we have 12 counties where we have technicians and conservation districts that are tracking feral hogs. So we requested that extension from NRCS. We do believe that that one will be approved, but we do not have that final document yet. And then we also requested a one-year extension to some funds that we got the USDA APHIS, which was congressionally directed spending for feral hog work. So we have technicians in Northeast Arkansas that are doing work. So we requested an extension on that. We did receive that. So that particular program will be extended. We want to keep trying to do as much as we can on the feral hog front. We're also engaged in two large contracts. So we just presented two contracts to the legislature last week for review. Those contracts, one is for a navigation study on the Red River. So we're working in conjunction with the state of Louisiana to do a feasibility study about increasing navigation up the Red River, up from the further north into Arkansas. And so that'll be roughly about a 2-year study. That the contractor will be Freeze Nicholas, and that's in connection with the Corps and a lot of other partners. And then we also did a second contract with Corner and Shipman out of St. Louis, Missouri, and this is for a lead service line inventory. So communities are required to do an inventory of lead service lines. And we also have funding for lead service line work through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So this is kind of the first step in understanding if we have a lead service line issue. And so this contractor will actually be doing that work across the state, and if you're mostly on communities that have a population of 50,000 or less. And so that's an important step that we need to do for our state. Especially since we have dollars, we need to know if we can spend those dollars or not, and where our problems lie. And really the kind of save the best for last, but I think all of you saw that Governor Sanders issued an executive order directing us and charging us, the Department of Agriculture and the Natural Resources Division with the new state water plan. And so we're in the process of updating that, plan. First phase is really working with the Corps, on the scoping of the plan. So that's going back to the 2014 plan, seeing, what all has changed. Are there other things that we should be looking at in addition to what was looked at in 2014? So that's really the first step. We've signed the contract with the Corps. The Corps is actually going to be our partner in this. They'll pay for half the cost, and then we'll pay for half the cost to do the study. I put in, each one of you should have the 2014 plan, just in case you want to go back and look at all the work that was done back then. But it's going to be a big step, a lot of work, but we're looking forward to it. So, and with that, that actually concludes my report.
Fantastic.
Chris,
Thank you. Yeah.
okay. Chris, could you repeat again? I'm sorry. The lead line, it's a new grant.
So this is a contract that we did. We're working in conjunction with the Department of Health to have a contractor that will do lead service line inventory for communities. And this is communities with a population of 50,000 or less.
Okay, and what's the process in that? Who does-
So they'll be reaching out. Their first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna go back and look at data. They're gonna look at code enforcement rules. What was the code over time in communities and across the state to determine if there was a time that lead was the preferred or acceptable under code. That'll be some of the first things that they do. So a lot of behind the scenes data gathering, looking at code and other things across the state. And then they very likely may have to do some on the ground reconnaissance work too.
And then they would identify the cities or they would contact.
They'll contact the cities. They've already prepared a brochure and some other things that they'll be reaching out. Yep. Yep.
The cities can go to the Department of Health Engineering section website and request to have the inventory completed.
Good, okay. And what was that pot of money?
So we're working right now with the Department of Health, and so we're using some of their set asides from the drinking water program. And so we'll be paying for that contract with those set asides.
Department of Health?
But here's the thing, if you recall from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, they were very specific on the pots of money, what it could be used for. So we have a certain amount, like 46% or so that we use for general projects, general like water and wastewater project. And then there was a certain amount that was dedicated only to lead service lines. And so we have that money. We're not spending any of that money right now, but this inventory will hopefully put us in a position where if we have a problem, we can utilize those funds.
And one reason I'm asking for details in that is because I've taken a part-time job, 79 hours a month with the Arkansas Municipal League. They have a new program, field reps, and we each have a certain part of the state, and we visit the cities. And so I have 57 cities that I visit, and just any kind of information that I can give them to help
Sure.
them. So that's why I was,
We'll get you some information, but I feel certain that we'll be working with Municipal League and others to make sure that the communities are aware.
good. So you think it will funnel down through
I think what,
AML?
yeah, obviously what we need is we need communities to participate. So
Sure.
getting the word
Yeah.
out is gonna be
Right.
important, but the contract just got approved or reviewed last week, so
Okay,
we just now are kind of making it into the contract.
go to the Department of Health website.
I just sent you the link to your email.
Okay. You're gonna send it to me?
Already did.
They already did.
Thank you.
I'm sure some of those water projects for these cities are going to eliminate the need for some of that.
Well, the thing is lead service lines are really those lines between the main to the house. So it's not necessarily the mains, it's really those service lines going in, so.
Not on the city side.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Those would be.
Yeah.
That'd be a great help. Oh,
If we have, the thing is, we need to know what sort of. problem we
Right,
have
yeah.
first.
Very good. Any other questions for Director Pleasure? Thank you. Next, we have the financial assistance report, Mr. Saki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, gentlemen. On the financial report for the period ending August 31, 2030, not a whole lot for the board for the period. Under the water development project fund, no new obligations to report. This leaves $2,796,906.29 available for future water development project. On water, sewer, solid waste, same, no new obligations to report. This leaves $5,704,864.24 available for future water, sewer, solid waste projects. On the general obligation fund, we have one request financial assistance in the amount of $7 million from Mountain Home. And with this $7 million, this leaves we will be over obligated by $310,149.40. And that concludes financial report.
Any questions, Mr. Zaki?
Thank you.
All right, next we got the window report. Mr. Brown.
Morning, everybody. My name is Michael Bynum. I'm an attorney with the department. I've been with the department for, as of October, it'll be 4 years. Your previously assigned attorney, Holden Jones, has moved on to be the county attorney for Saline County. And so in the interim, I will be filling in for him. I have no real news to report other than just kind of what we're doing to ensure continuity of service. The number one priority is just to keep things moving, making sure staff have the day-to-day legal services they need. You know, there are also several projects which you'll hear from time to time. I'm getting caught up on those pretty well and making myself available as needed. So, like I said, nothing really to report on the legal side, but I wanted to assure you that staff is getting the support they need, and they will continue to if they don't. We hire a new attorney or we make adjustments otherwise. Any questions?
I will say too, Michael's been a big help. I mean, when Colton left, we had contracts and all kinds of things that, you know, just need some legal eyes on, and it's been really good to help us. So appreciate all the help that you've given so far.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Moving on to the irrigation project update. Perkins.
So all good things to report this morning, for Biomeda and Greer for your irrigation projects. I'll start with Biomeda. So, Canal 1000 phase 3.1 is a construction phase that has been going on for a couple of years now. Contractor is back on site. There were some issues with that, over the last probably about 18 months, but contractors back on site, anticipated to finish within the next month. There were some weather days in there. But they're getting very close. We were actually out on the site last week with the Corps of Engineers, some of the real estate folks, and then a couple of weeks prior to that, Memphis District Colonel Saucer was out to take a look at what that construction looked like in some of the areas there. So that portion of canal will be completed for the most part, not in the technical sense, once grass is up and all that stuff. Then that's when it will be transferred over to the state district for maintenance. Phase 3.2, the designs are complete on that section of canal. Real estate acquisitions ongoing, expected to be completed by the end of the calendar year for contract award early 2024. And it's expected to be completed by 2026. So that's roughly about an 18-month on that construction. That construction consists of a little over 14,000 linear feet of canal, 8 farm offtakes, 5 siphon structures, excuse me. 1 gravity turnout, 2 pump turnouts, and grading and drainage associated with that. That will get that project to Highway 15. And the completion of that phase of the project unlocks irrigation to 80 to 100,000 acres right there in that section of, that first phase of Biomeda. And then, that project has also been doing, clean out of Upper Indian Bayou. So there's over 9 miles of clean out that have been completed with a floating track, which is pretty neat to me. And then the next set of clean out will be with Wabasika Bayou. The Corps has 65% of that design complete. Anticipate that to award next, August. And that will be approximately 29 miles of clean out on that portion of the bayou. RCPP funds with Biomeda, they're working on three pumps. And the associated lines that feed out from Indian Bayou, so those are to be completed fairly soon this fall as well. And highway bridges, Highway 161 and 165 bridges are under construction and expected to have traffic back over them by the end of the year. If you haven't been through there, that direction in a while, it's pretty impressive. That bridge construction that's going on there, they got the detour road put up very quickly, and those bridges are coming along very nicely. For Green Prairie, the pump station, substation, contract is in the final stages of being awarded, or the task order to Energy, to get started on the construction of that substation, and that will get power to the entire substation. And that's expected to be about an 18-month contract at the longest, I believe. Energy will do that work. They have some design work to complete on that, and then expect construction to start next year on that. The pump station re-procurement, was put out to bid by the Corps and closed on August 17th. We are waiting the final bid review from the Corps on that, so that work will complete the pump station, the work that was not done by the previous contractor, and so that will get that complete. So we should, by the time these 2 contracts are awarded and construction is completed, the pump station with Green Prairie will finally be complete and have power to it to operate this first phase of water delivery. Phase 1, canal segment expected to be completed by spring and summer of 2024. That's 10 miles of canal total. So on the Green Prairie project, they're moving approximately about 30,000 cubic yards of dirt per day. We've got 20 tractors, 44 dirt pans, and 3 dump trucks running out there. You see dust flying anytime you head that direction. There's 5 county road crossings and pipelines that are expected to be in construction in the next month or so, weather permitting. So obviously, if it doesn't rain, they'll be able to get a lot done. And the White River Irrigation District is fully funded for the first 12 miles of canal construction and 50 miles of irrigation pipeline, and that'll serve approximately 40,000 acres in that first phase. They're partially funded, and when I say funded, between federal and state match, that's there. To get to phase 2, which will add an additional 25,000 acres west of the Hazen Airport to Carlisle. They anticipate to start some of that construction next year. The districts have requests in through congressional authorized spending through the Corps of Engineers. So when the budget shakes out for Congress and for the federal budget, we'll see where that lands, but we feel good about the dollars that are coming in that way. NRCS continues to apply for funds through PL 566 for the projects. So that federal dollars are coming in. It's a good problem to have. Sometimes it gets a little hectic trying to manage who's doing what on the federal side and make sure we're not duplicating any efforts in places. So it's a good problem to have, but sometimes a little stressful.
So,
Any questions?
Megan?
Good report.
Yes, thank you. All right, next we've got the clean water survey. Ms. Coffey, I believe, is presenting that.
Good morning, I'm Rudd Coffey, and thank you for having me this morning, and feel free to stop and interrupt at any time as I run through some report on the numbers and the results. First is that you should have a little colorful cheat sheet, and before anyone has a panic attack, there's one type of in there that might set your heart aflutter. The needs that we're gonna be talking about are not in the trillions. So it said 5,559 billion, so that should be million. So with an M. All right, so just I wanted to make sure we didn't go too far afield there. Okay. So what?
Give me just a second.
Okay.
So this should be million.
All right, so I'm here to talk because this survey is completed. And so we actually have results that we can give you. We know the state portion, the Arkansas story. We don't really know what the full federal story is. And so you might say, right. So, kind of the old Admiral Stockdale line, who am I and why am I here? I'm from Northbridge Environmental. I was a consultant hired by, I have one of that one. Awesome. I was hired by ANRC and Debbie and Ryan's team to do a lot of the work with my little firm to take some of this work off of the plates of the state. And so we exclusively work on supporting the SRF programs, both at the federal level and at the state level. We had previously helped out with Arkansas, and so we're familiar with the state. And we, on the needs survey, we helped out New Mexico, Arkansas, Connecticut, and Puerto Rico. And I worked specifically with, and we'll be trying not to step too much on the toes of both Debbie Dixon and Tate Wentz, who were kind of the go-tos and were critical in getting this effort delivered. So this is a required federal program. It is something that the state and all 51 states and territories, when I say 51 states, we include Puerto Rico as part of that, had to do. We'll go over the results and more importantly, what the impact or the benefits of those results are. Okay, so let's get to cut to the chase. On the drinking water side, the state of Arkansas comprises over 1% of the total national need, which is great because that directs more federal drinking water SRF dollars. On the clean water side, this got kind of etched into stone in 1987 when the Clean Water Program got launched, and we're less than 1% here. And then there have been all these clean watershed needs surveys that came before, and they've all kind of bounced around, and this is all in 2022 dollars, bounced around $1 billion of need. And so one of the charges was we want to look better, right? We started out when the program was launched higher, and we've kind of dropped down below. And it's important because when Congress and others are looking at the total national need, looking at how much each state gets, this is the number they look at. They look at what's your portion as a state of the national total. And so what we were able to do in the last 2 years was estimate almost $6 billion in needs. So more in total than the 4 previous surveys combined, which is great. And we, feel really, it's a really strong number. We don't know what this percentage of national need is going to be because we don't know what all the other states have done. I've collected intel on a couple states, and I know there's some states that have done really well. There's other states like Texas that isn't as happy about their number. So, it's just going to be what this number is. We're hoping it goes north, that yellow bar goes north. So what is the need survey? that we're talking about. It's the Clean Watershed Needs Survey. So no drinking water, just water quality projects, stormwater, sewer, non-point source pollution. There is a little wrinkle. There is some drinking water eligibility, and where we could, we captured that because our goal was to get the biggest number possible. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Drinking Water Infrastructure Needs Survey and Assessment. It also happens every 4 years. It's a very different beast. It is much easier. It's much more targeted. It's kind of a modeled approach. EPA wants a census approach on the water quality side. They wanted every single treatment plant documented in the state. Every wastewater treatment plant, every line of sewer, that kind of thing. So that's their aspiration. They do this every 4 years because Congress required it as part of the Clean Water Act. There's been 17 of these. The last one was in 2012. So you can see there's this pattern every 4 years, and then there was a decade gap. And that's a real kind of important part of the story. Because there was that decade gap, there wasn't anything for us to draw from. So in previous surveys, you could just look at your past results and roll them forward. You could look at your portfolio of needs and say, well, we have funded 1, 2, and 3 projects, but the rest of these still need to happen. And that kind of gave you a base. We had to start from scratch. They kind of wiped the plate clean. 2012 was out the window, and they gave no new resources to the state. So this was something that you could fund under your Clean Water SRF admin funds, but EPA had new resources to conduct the survey out of the Infrastructure Act, but nothing for the states. And so it's something else to keep in mind. And then there's a lot of criteria on what you can capture. These projects had to be eligible for the Clean Water SRF, had to be needed sometime in the next 20 years. And that's a really actually challenging time frame for a lot of communities. And they had to be unfunded as of January 1st, 2022. But the biggest one is this documentation piece. EPA was really strict about what documentation we had to collect and catalog and categorize and submit to them to qualify things. I would say more than $1 billion worth of projects just in Arkansas didn't make it because for some reason or another, EPA wasn't satisfied with the documentation. But we did really well in what we could gather and could submit. And when we talk about the types of projects that we collected, it's really almost everything on the sewer side. So wastewater treatment plants, all the sewer lines, stormwater, CSO, SSO, but it got really into the nitty gritty of, we could submit septic system data. We could submit on source water protection, which we did a few, dams, reservoirs, that kind of thing. And we really got into non-point source pollution control. So working with the state, there was 4 kind of categories that we identified as kind of the priority ones. So a couple of them had to do with agriculture, these top 2, with logging and forestry management, and stream hydromodification, stream restoration. Those were kind of the areas we decided to focus on. I have a slide later kind of explaining why we focus on certain areas. So what are the details collected? We wanted to get a lot of information, and this is challenging for communities. They hate to kind of give all this information about, what's their flow, what's their treatment train, who are they connected to, all that kind of stuff. So the approach we took, which was to satisfy EPA to the bare minimum level so that they would accept it, but kind of walk away. We could have spent a lot more time on gathering and cleaning up all these technical details, but they don't add to the dollar bottom line. And we were trying to maximize that dollar bottom line. So what we had to do is we had to go through, and there was dozens of types of documentations that EPA could accept. They had to be recent. They had to establish a need. It was pretty hairy. And they have very limited ability to model, especially for all the kind of traditional needs of sewer projects and that kind of stuff. You really had to show you had a PER, you had an application in, or you had a master plan, a CIP, something that kind of crystallized that. And so that's what we worked to try to gather. The federal government uses these results in a number of ways. They're looking kind of globally at how have our regulations impacted water quality? How are we doing? How many treatment plants are out there? What are they treating? How many people are benefiting from that, et cetera. really important is that it is a crystal kind of point of focus for Congress when they're looking at, do we continue to fund the Clean Water SRF and at what level? That's what these results, Congress really does look at these. And so we wanted to make sure that for Arkansas, that it was a strong result so that they would see that. And then there are additional pots of funding. So the Clean Water SRF allotment, as I've said, that's etched in stone. Unless that changes, and it always could change. And that's one of the reasons that we don't want to sit on our hands and have a lackluster result. But there are new pots of federal funding, grant funding that can be directed to local projects. And those pots are directly attributable to what your percentage of the national need is. And so Arkansas is getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from some of these pots of funding, and that share should and could, and we expect it will, grow with the results of this survey. So that's, was one of the reasons we really wanted to kind of maximize that dollar amount. So what we did, we had a whole bunch of things from an info session. We contacted municipalities. We did really deep dive with the 36 largest communities, and we harvested data where we could find it. So we wanted to try to harvest as much kind of already existing data as possible. And then where EPA would let us, we tried to model data. And this is really where working with some of the experts in the state, like the 319 program and TAPE was essential, because we were getting data that was already existing and programs that were already existing on poultry farms and bank restorations and some of these other efforts. And so EPA had a very strict deadline and a very strict process for what models it would allow. You would have to go case by case and explain to them, this is our modeling approach. You have to bless it. They would come back to us invariably and ask us to modify it or to improve it. And so it was kind of a negotiation effort, and I'll show you, I think our result was really robust.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any reason you chose to do the 36 largest municipalities? Because I'll tell you, the smaller municipalities are the ones that,
Really have needs.
yes.
Yeah, so we included all of them to the extent we could. And I'll show a slide later. I think we ended up getting data from 335 or so. So we did get a really wide swath of municipalities, but in terms of those where we were able to kind of individually kind of go in and see what they would have online and what their annual budgets were and that kind of thing, we had to try to kind of get the biggest bang for the buck. So we started with the large, and then we filled in all as many gaps as we could with everyone that had either come to kind of a WAC, applied for the WAC, or if they had applied for ARPA, or if they had kind of given any indication that they had a need. We also scooped all
So
those
there
up.
was some
Oh,
contact
yeah.
with the small communities. Thank
Definitely.
you.
But that's certainly one of those things where, you could always do more. And so we had to kind of make a decision on what was going to be most cost effective. So this just goes, it's about a 2-year timeline that this whole survey took place. And the Arkansas portion was about 9 months in here. So we got started a little late. This was the deadline right here for submissions of models for non-point source needs, which we missed. And so we had to essentially, EPA, because we had developed a working relationship with them on New Mexico, and for other states too. It wasn't just Arkansas, but they said, we won't let you submit a new modeling approach, but you can take any modeling approach that another state has done. And if we've blessed it, you can kind of piggyback or copycat their modeling approach. And so we kind of use that to the maximum extent we could to find ones that we thought would be useful and valuable for Arkansas, adapted them to the state and applied those. And I'll show you the results on those. So the goal was to be efficient and cost effective. This could easily take years and years and 5 times as much money and do a much more exact job. And I'm sure EPA would love that. And so our goal was not to be totally exhaustive. It was to try to see what can we do to get as big a result as possible while minimizing the burden on communities, on state staff, but also satisfy EPA. So we really went after the low-hanging fruit. We didn't focus on all the technical data and infrastructure. We just did the kind of the bare minimum on that. And then we used models where we could. And one of the things is on these models, we did, really focus on some priority areas and priority zones of the state. and I'll mention that in a minute. So this is kind of the results, again, from the most 4 previous clean watershed needs surveys. None of them went much above 1.3 billion, and we were a little over 5.5 billion for this need survey. So it's somewhere around a 600% increase. So 6.5 times what we saw the previous survey. And you've already seen that. So what are some of the breakdown of results? Well, the wastewater, which are the sewer and the wastewater treatment plant, these are our typical projects for the Clean Water SRF. Those are obviously the biggest chunk of the needs. But the non-traditional things, the things that maybe don't come through the program as much, it's important to see. I mean, collectively, this is over $2 billion. So it's starting to approach the traditional needs, just in these kind of almost side efforts. And so certainly with non-point source, with stormwater and septic, for all of those, we didn't do an exhaustive effort. There was always more we could grab. So for the non-point source, there was a program, a model EPA had available for cropland, and I'll show you kind of the driver on that. It's per acre. It's kind of interesting. But stormwater was really big. We collected about $250 million worth of projects from communities on stormwater. And then we were able to triple that number and model out another $560 million for communities that didn't submit stormwater needs. And there's one community, I'm not gonna name them, but I kind of put in a Trojan horse provision in our model so that the smallest This meeting here provides information to help steer state priorities. Do we want to be doing more here? Do we have this need coming up in 20 years that we need to start thinking about? And then finally, I mentioned these federal pots of funding. One is the Sewer Overflow and Reuse Grants Program called OSG. It can fund almost everything but wastewater treatment plants and sewer systems. So that's kind of what we think about. It was launched, it's not huge yet, but every year Congress is putting tens of millions of dollars more into it, and it's re-upping that number every year. Right now, the annual allocation is like $350,000. But again, we expect that to go up. We expect the Arkansas portion of that to increase in coming years based on the results. Final slide, the keys to our success. I can't emphasize enough the fact that the state had done kind of an internal needs survey in 2021, followed right by the ARPA application, all the excitement around ARPA, the bill funds coming out. There was a lot of interest in funding. There was a lot of states or communities that already raised their hands saying, we have projects to fund. We were able to really harvest a ton from there. We were also able to get into the state files and the WAC applications and make sure we got everything from the PPLs and the WAC that hadn't been funded. And then we were able to work with Tate and his team and the projects and the data they had from the 319 program. The restrictions, a big restriction, I'm not gonna lie, is EPA. We had a number of painful phone calls where they were asking us to redo stuff that they had told us to do it that way. And then we did it that way and they said, redo it the other way. And it was, I would be on vacation and that kind of thing. And we'd have to do this because there was a very strict kind of timeline and timing for all of this. The contractor support, I think, whether it's contractor support or done in-house, trying to get started a little bit earlier in the non-point source, I think there's a lot of meat still on that bone, especially going forward and, things like unpaved roads and other things that you can think of that would be big numbers and big drivers. The lack of baseline was a real challenge. We weren't able to recycle any data from 2012, and it's always hard getting traction when you're reaching out to communities. They have no real dog in this fight, right? They're not really going to benefit. And so it was amazing the interaction and the cooperation we did get. So going forward for next time around, which will be before you know it, in a couple of years, they'll start gearing up. I think there's a lot more that can be done in the non-point source model. I mean, when I say a lot more, billions of dollars more. So especially if that number becomes an important driver of federal grant funds, that's something to keep in mind. Also, there's a lot of great kind of TMDL and watershed planning efforts in the state and trying to piggyback and get more needs out of those. For those large communities we worked with, a lot of them, unless they're under enforcement action, a lot of their needs projections just went out 5 years. And so anything eligible is eligible in years 6 through 20. But for a lot of cities, they don't plan out that far. So trying to work with them ahead of time to get an idea of what's a number we can put on paper that'll satisfy EPA and their documentation, strict documentation measures that will kind of capture some of your long-term needs. And then finally, stormwater adaptation. Again, the stormwater number I think was pretty large. It was almost $1 billion. And I think that's, as you all experience with wet weather and all that kind of stuff, this is going to be a growing number that we want to make sure it doesn't get lost. Any questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great report. Thank you. Next we have the Thomas Pond petition.
Good morning, I'm Whit Montague, I'm in the dam safety section, and I'm here to talk about the Thomas Pond Dam petition. Commissioners, you should have received a packet regarding this petition, including the transcript from the public hearing, copies of the submittals from the petitioner and the owner of the dam, and also our findings and recommendations. I'm going to give a little background on the petition and to reiterate our recommendations and our findings for the commissioners. Our findings and recommendations are that this petition be denied. To give you background, Mr. Travis Hubbard of 130 County Road 71 in Bono, Arkansas, submitted a petition in February of this year to the Natural Resource Division, asking that the commission require regulation of Thomas Pond Dam. Thomas Pond Dam is located in Craighead County in Bono. It's a small earthen dam. It was constructed in 1958. It's classified as a low hazard dam. That indicates that failure of this dam would cause no loss of life and minimal economic damage. In January of 2023, there was a breach in the center portion of this dam. And the resultant damage was deposition of soil on Mr. Hubbard's property, covering part of his septic field. Mr. Hubbard is approximately 525 feet south of the dam. I went out later that month to confirm that this had occurred, to look at the dam to see if it did reach regulatory limits, and to talk to the neighbors and to get an idea of what had happened. When I visited, I confirmed that the damage definitely was less than the limit for a significant threat to property or people. I confirmed that the dam fell below the regulatory limit, and that is why it is not currently a permitted dam. And I also documented the damages. I spoke with Mr. Hubbard, reiterated this to him, and he decided that he would like to request that the commission regulate this dam. So he submitted that petition in February, and in June and July of this year, we submitted we had the Arkansas Democrat Gazette publish notice of the petition and the public hearing. I also sent out notices to 44 neighbors downstream of Thomas Pond Dam, personally sent them via a postcard to let them know of the petition and of the public hearing. The public hearing was held on August 1st at the Craighead County Courthouse in compliance with Title VII, which governs how the state regulates non-federal dams. This hearing was attended by both the owner of the dam, Mr. Bobby K. Davis, the petitioner, Mr. Travis Hubbard, and six other members of the public. At that time, both the petitioner and the dam owner submitted documentation. The commissioner should have a copy of both those submittals, as well as a copy of the transcript from the hearing. Dam safety staff that were in attendance included myself and Ryan Benfield. Based on the field investigation and the testimony presented at the public hearing, the staff reached the following conclusions: that the petitioner, the downstream residents, and the dam owner agree that the impacts of the releases from the Thomas Pond Dam could be alleviated through improvement of the downstream drainage system and repair of the dam, and that Thomas Pond Dam is a small, low hazard structure, and it does not present an immediate danger to human life. And therefore, we recommend that the commission deny the request that Thomas Pond Dam be required to go through the commission's dam safety permitting and compliance process. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a comment, and I would agree with the staff's recommendation to deny this. I find it ridiculous.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you made your inspection, was there any attempt to see what type of clay and the sand content in that clay was used in the preparation of the dam site? You use the word clay. When you look at clay, it has certain percentage of sand, and you have to have a certain percentage when you build that dam.
So this was not, the dam is not under a regulatory authority. And my investigation was more to determine if the event had occurred and what were the impacts from the event and what the hazard level associated with it. So there were no formal investigations, no core taken, no core samples taken or analyzed to see how it was constructed.
Move we accept that recommendation.
Second.
Commissioner Darrow, Commissioner Fairwood, and so I just wanna make sure you didn't have anything.
Commissioner Burke, did you have a comment?
I did not. I was just gonna make the motion if no one else did.
Do we have a second?
I did.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pointer. All in favor to accept the staff's recommendation? Aye. Opposed? Who carries?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we got the deal bond work plan.
All right. Thank you, Commission. So I'm gonna kick this off and then, Carol, our financial advisor, is gonna give you a small presentation on our bond program also, but, so we ended a biennium at the end of June, so we started a new biennium, and every biennium, we have to do a work plan on how, and request approval to move, to sell bonds on our general obligation bond program, or at least get the authority to do so. We'll make a decision later if you actually want to sell bonds. So I have a copy of the work plan in front of you. I'm gonna mention a couple things and then turn it over to Cheryl. First, just so you know the numbers, so, and make sure there's no confusion. We over the last couple of years have had two different GO bond authorities. We had one that was a 97 and then one that was a 2007. We exhausted the 97 last biennium, so you'll never really hear about that again except for paying off those bonds. This is only authority we have left in the GO bond program is what we call the 2007 authority. And so that started out with 300 million in authority that we could sell. And just keep in mind, this isn't a revolving program. Once we sell it, it goes away. We can't sell it again as money comes back. So up until last June, we sold 43 million under this program. That meant to date, we have sold 196,500,000, leaving us 103,500,000 additional authority we can sell until this authority exhausts. Also, so you know that that authority, unlike the 97 authority, had a provision in it that said of the 300 million, only 100 million could go to the irrigation projects. Zero has to go to it, but we could not give more than 100 million to the irrigation projects. So when we sold the 30 million in June for the earmarked for the irrigation projects, that left us with 50 million remaining. We had already sold 20 million under this. So just go back to the numbers, 300 million originally, we have 103,500,000 we can sell. And then of that 103,500,000, 50 million of it, or 103,500,000, 50 million can be sold to the irrigation projects. So what your recommendation is, before Carol goes through the more numbers, is that we asked during this biennium to sell the full 60. You can't sell more than 60 without extra approvals from the legislature. We can set authority to sell the entire 60, and of that, we can sell 35 million for the irrigation projects. So if we did that, we would, if we sold the whole amount this biennium, which a lot of bienniums, we don't hit the 60 million cap. We would have 43,500,000 left in total authority. And if we sold the entire 35 million we're requesting authority to for irrigation, we would have 15 million left for the following biennium. And so if you run those numbers out and based on our current burn rate, you can see this biennium and the next biennium will probably exhaust our general obligation bond authority, assuming we continue to sell at the rate we are. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl to go up and give a presentation and then ask questions. She's going to take you through kind of our interest rates and where we've been on our program.
Give us a minute, we're having a technical difficulty.
Good morning, Commissioner. And my name is Cheryl Fluterman. I'm with Raymond James, and I'm here because we're your financial advisor for the GO bond program. So, like Ryan mentioned, I'll go over a little bit of the history, just real quickly, and then talk about the market and looking forward for next year, the next biennium. Hopefully you I think you have the presentation in your packet as well. I did update market slides from last week.
One second.
Okay.
Cheryl, we didn't print it off, and we're gonna do it just
Yeah.
electronic, so
Yeah.
hopefully it will.
And while we're waiting, okay.
I'll have to do the slide for you though, because it's on mine.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so, I think, yeah, my contact information and then table of content. What I just mentioned, and then we'll go to the first slide. So Ryan mentioned the 1997 Act. And, like he mentioned, that's been completely exhausted. You've issued everything. You do see, what is outstanding as far as what still has to be paid off. And, the 2013 just paid off in 2023, and then we have the 2014 fee will fall off July 1st, 2024. Those will be paid off. And then if you want to flip to the next slide. The 2007 Act, and Ryan's already mentioned some of this, so there is $103.5 million remaining for you to issue, and of that amount, 50 million, just reiterating what you said, 50 million is left for irrigation, and you can see what we have outstanding as well. We do periodically look at refunding opportunities to see if it will save any money by doing so. Currently, because a lot of the bonds that could be called in the near future are going to pay off, and with rates where they are, doesn't really make sense right now. So there's no opportunities there. But we look at that periodically for you, and we'll bring you any opportunities if we see them in the future. So, if you want to go to the next section is the outstanding debt service. So this is your principal and interest on an annual basis for each of the bond issues. So you can see 2014 B pays off soon, and if you go out to the far side is the total debt service for all of the outstanding bonds that you have currently. So you have, for instance, 2024 fiscal year end, you have $20.8 million in debt service, principal and interest between all of those bond issues. This takes both acts together and looks at the entire picture for debt service. Okay, I want to go on to the next slide. So current markets and trends. The Fed committee is meeting, they met yesterday and they will announce whether or not they will raise rates today at 1 p.m. our time. So I don't have any update on that at the time. There is expectations that they will pause and not raise rates again at this meeting, but they plan on doing so before the end of the year. We'll see this afternoon if that holds true. But there is an overall indication that they're going to keep rates higher for longer before they cut any rates. And you can kind of see on this, of course, inflation still persists, so that's still a problem, and oil prices make their job a little more difficult and remain high, especially here lately. So the key takeaways is this bottom chart just shows municipal fund flows. The green bars show inflows into the market, and the red show outflows. So as you can see, since basically November 2021, we've been in an outflow period. And then you can see the trends as far as actual issuance. And you can see that there has been a lot less issuance over for 2023 compared to the last few years. So just to let you know what the municipal bond market looks like right now. And if you'll slip to the next slide. So this is a good graph I like to show to let you know this is AAA MMD, which is tax exempt bond rate, the benchmark. And the red is the current, where we are currently as of September 15th. So your 10-year AAA MMD, which is your highest tax exempt bond rate, is trading at about 3%. And then you can see it's inverted. So our short-term rates, the curve is basically flat. There is no curve to it. It's a little inverted at the moment on the front end. And the blue shows the average since going all the way back to 1993. So you can see we're basically at the average. So even though it feels really high because rates have been so low for so long, it's really historically not that bad, so. I'm sure some of you remember paying 12% on your mortgages, so, we're still well below that. If you'll flip to the next slide. And this shows, so taxable, the last few times we issued taxable debt, and what I'm gonna show you today is also issuing, taxable bonds. And so, the benchmark for that, of course, is treasury rates, and you can see, they are actually above the historical average. This one goes back to 1996, but it also inverted. So you have higher rates on the shorter end of the curve, and again, pretty flat. The 10-year treasury is 4.34 right now. And then, if you'll go back just one more. Yeah, right there. So, Bloomberg does a survey of many economists, so around 50 economists were surveyed, and just indicating, you know, what does it look like going forward each quarter? What do they expect, where they expect the treasury to be? And then, of course, gross domestic product and some other CPI, unemployment, some other factors on this slide. And as you can see, the 10-year treasury is currently 4.33 based on this data, and going to 2025 Q4, it's only going to go down by about 0.75%, but at least it's showing the trend that it will go down. So this is looking a little more optimistic than what I said before. So, you know, we're getting mixed signals from all of the data that the Fed is getting. So obviously that makes their job more difficult too. So I just want to kind of give you a base on why I ran the numbers I ran. So even though, yeah, if you'll flip to the next section. So what we did, working with Ryan and Debbie, we basically looked at, if we took that entire amount that you're authorized to do in a biennium, the $60 million, and did a 10-year and then a 30-year, is what I'm showing. And on the 10-year, we did an optional 5-year par call, and we assumed a taxable rate of 7%. If we do the irrigation has to be issued taxable. So, but we could, you know, bifurcate that and do a percentage, tax exempt and taxable we've done before. But I've just assumed all of it would be taxable for now. And I assumed sort of a worst case rate scenario, if inflation and everything else persists and the Fed has to continue to raise rates. So I used 7%. And you can see with a AA rating, you can see what your total principal and interest are for each year would be approximately $8.6 million for that $60 million. And show you your estimated new debt service that you would have going out to 2049. So if we issue no more debt except for this, you would have payments out to 2049. So if you'll flip to the next slide, that is the 30-year scenario, again, with the same assumptions. We changed the call feature on this to 10 years instead of 5 years, since you're going out longer. And you can see this takes us to 2054, and our total principal and interest in this scenario will be about $4.8 million a year. So again, that's all taxable. So any questions about that?
All right. So yeah, so what we need then is, so if y'all vote to approve this plan of work, then just so you know the steps, it'll then go in the CFO for the state. We'll do an analysis of it to see how it's going to affect general revenue, because this is general obligation bonds. It'll go to the legislature for their advice, and then the governor will choose to issue a proclamation or choose not to issue a proclamation authorizing you to sell bonds during this next 2-year period that started July 1. Just so you know, based on our current projections, that usually takes till around December or January before we get that, assuming everything goes in a normal course. But we do anticipate we will need to sell next spring. If you noticed on Anusa's report, we're slightly now over obligated, but only less than we have been at any other time y'all have been on the commission, I think, but slightly over obligated. So, but we do think we'll need additional funds, most likely for the irrigation projects in the spring, assuming we get the authority to sell bonds, just to give you, when we think we'll go be selling. Probably not the entire 60, possibly, but probably not the entire 60, but some spring sell this year, and then probably again before the end of the biennium to get the entire 60. So just if you get a vote approving.
Absolutely. Is there a motion to approve the sale?
I'll make motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have applications for financial assistance. Bobby Dixon.
Good morning. Are we ready? I have a short list today, I promise. Okay. You mind with it?
You can use them.
No
No
comment.
comment. So we're gonna start out with our, recommendations for financial assistance. We've changed our format a little bit based on how we did them the last couple of times. So first up, we have Mountain Home. We're recommending $7 million for a wastewater treatment plant improvement project, and this is gonna come out of the GEO bond program. Anusa included this recommendation in his report. As you can see, it's a $17 million project, but they only need $7 million from us. Next, we have Hergold for their $5.5 million project, loan, wastewater treatment headwork improvements. They have a $7.3 million project. We're recommending a loan for $5,509,500 out of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Next up, we have Alfred. They have a $1.6 million project for the elevated water tank, water line, and meter replacement. We're recommending a loan for $1,606,172 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Arkadelphia, they have a water service line inventory and replacement project for $4.2 million. We're recommending a loan for $4,250,000 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Ashdown has a $12.5 million project for water distribution improvements. We're recommending a loan for $12,510,650 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. Central Arkansas Water has a large project for the Jack Wilson Water Treatment Plant Renewal and Resiliency Project. They're upgrading the plant for $150 million, and we're recommending a loan for $150 million out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And I always pronounce this wrong, so forgive me. Dorset Public Water Authority has a $548,000 project for water meter replacement, so we're recommending a loan for $548,825 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. North White County has a $2.7 million project for the Rocky Point Road improvement. We're recommending a loan for $2,721,045 from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program. So there's a mistake on this one. I want to point this out first, and it's a mistake in your handbook as well. This amount should be $9,482,814. So the project is $12.6 million. It's a water treatment plant upgrade project. We're recommending a loan for $9,482,804 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
Wind has a water service line inventory replacement project for $4.3 million. We're recommending a loan for $4,300,000 out of the drinking water state revolving fund. Texarkana Water Utilities has a $3.5 million project for the North State Line 36-inch water line replacement project. We're recommending a loan for $3,551,000 out of the drinking water state revolving fund. Texarkana has another project for $1.5 million. It's the East Creek 12-inch water line replacement project. We're recommending a loan for $1,533,000 out of the drinking water state revolving fund program. Texarkana has one more project, $3.2 million for the Lakewood Elevated Tank Project. We're recommending a loan for $3,240,000 out of the drinking water state revolving fund. So that's the conclusion of the new recommendations. I have a few more for change in fundings. Do you want me to continue or would you like to vote at this point?
Let's continue.
Okay. Sure. Greenland has a project for 3.2, the increase of $3.2 million with a total project cost of about $7 million. We're recommending a loan for $3,204,000 of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. Dumas Pickens needs another $154,886 out of their $531,000 project. So we're recommending a loan for $154,884 out of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And Runyon Acres has an $8 million project. They need an additional $8.1 million to complete their project. So we're recommending a loan out of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for $8,155,412. And that is the conclusion of our recommendation.
What was the reason for completing their project?
The majority of them are for bid overruns or things they've encountered during the project. Runyon Acres was one where we when we did our original recommendation, we made a mistake in the dollars. It was supposed to be 7.7 million, and then the bids came in high on top of that. So this is to correct that to the correct amount, as well as to request the increase.
On that project, how can a 1,500 population take care of a $9 million debt note?
So they have users outside of their community.
I'll say, so it's servicing more than 1,500 people.
Any other questions for Debbie?
Move accept.
Not done. Oh. Got one more. One more thing.
Just a second, let me unmute Commissioner Bird that way while you're doing that. I'll do it when you finish.
Okay, we've got a motion and we need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Next I have the report on the de-obligations, and fairly long this time around. So, our first list here, you can see the first 5 are projects that have completed and they didn't need to utilize all their funds. The bottom 6, I think it is, are funds that were approved in June that they declined the funding at a later date. So just to give you an idea, that's the purposes here. And on our next slide, we had 2 at the top, they're reduction in scope, and then the rest of them are all declining funding.
Now, was this on the ARPA?
So this is state revolving funds.
Okay.
You have either clean water, drinking water, water, sewer, solid waste. None of these are ARPA funds.
Okay.
Debbie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We need to complete that.
Not the other day. All right, next we have, Water Well Construction Committee, Commissioner Anderson.
I am not sure how I got the chair of this committee. But, August 31st, we had a water well driller construction committee. And I got to become the chair of that committee. I have never drilled a water well in my life. But I own a large number of water wells and I know about that much about the subject. So I guess that's how we got here. First meeting was held August 31st. I was elected the chairman of the committee. And I'm hoping I'm off the chairman spot in January.
It's whenever a water well contractor gets appointed to this commission, then that person will actually serve as chair of that committee, will chair that committee. But in the meantime,
You're stuck with me.
William, I appreciate Commissioner Anderson stepping up and agreeing to do that.
Yes, sir. Our committee will meet quarterly. And if any issues were to come up, a hearing would come up, before next scheduled meeting, a separate meeting would be held. Our committee discussed the following areas: rulemaking, disciplinary issues, ethical complaint, evaluation of applicants, and rule changes. We have inspector report. Our staff inspectors conducted rig inspections, and I know for a fact they did it because they inspected a rig on my farm. They investigated complaints and an illegal pump installation, and they trained 5 contractors on how to use water well database to enter well reports. The new water well app is being tested to improve functionality. Enforcement. I think there were some people out of compliance on installation of pumps. There were letters sent to the plumbers who were doing illegal pump installation. Violators were given the chance to settle by paying the fines or proceed to having a hearing to our committee. We have a consideration of applicants 4 new well drillers and 1 pump installer were approved by the committee. And will be scheduled to take their test. It was Blake Cabot, William somebody, Prochaska, I guess, Travis Knobzinger, Daryl Hendricks, Michael Raines. We had 2 driller apprentices and 6 pump installer apprentices were approved. It'll be William Martin, Aaron Gerbich, Joseph Moore, Stephen Struig, Justin Haney, Randall Rankin, and Lisa Kirkland. We do need a couple of actions. A recommendation to this commission. I'd like to get a motion to approve the 4 new drillers and the 1 new pump installer and 2 driller apprentices and 6 pump installer apprentices. Our committee met on the 31st. We approved of these, but they have to be rubber stamped or approved by this commission. Can I get a motion?
I got it.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And then we've got, another action. Where am I at?
The water well.
The Water Well Construction Committee passed a recommendation that the approval of applicants for testing and apprenticeship be delegated to the staff rather than be approved by the committee. This wouldn't be in front, and I agree with this completely. If I'm a water well driller and I need to hire somebody, I don't want to wait 3 months for a board meeting to get it approved. And I would like to make a motion that the staff could approve these permits. And if I could get a motion for that.
So moved.
And a second, and all by saying aye.
Aye.
Other business, NRD will partner with the Water Well Contractors Association at the January meeting. Staff will be attending that meeting and plan to work with the association on training classes. And that is my report.
I know you're not sure how you got there, but you did a good thing.
Thank you, Dan. I don't need any more science.
Just those 2 action items. Very good.
All right, let's see, we've got the soil classifiers program.
Leave Edgar on the line.
Yeah. Let's see.
You see Edgar up there?
Unless he's the phone number, but I don't.
Reached out to Edgar and, he said he would be here, and then we could be having technical difficulties or.
Well, if he comes back, we'll circle back around. Okay. All right, we've got the partner reports, we've got AACD first. Right on, was that there, man?
Yeah, he's coming.
Oh,
There he is.
Can y'all hear me okay?
yes, sir.
All right. I'm remote in Louisiana right now at the National Association of State Foresters meeting, so I'll give my report. Sorry, I can't be there in person. I am John McAlpine. I was born in Hot Springs, live in Monticello since 1994. I am a forester and president of Kingwood Forestry Services, where I'm a forester, an appraiser, and a real estate broker. I am a member of the Drew County Conservation District, and I'm just come in as role on as the state president of the Arkansas Association of Conservation Districts. I'm also serving as the executive board member for the South Central area of the National Association of Conservation Districts, and I chair the NACD Forestry Committee in the Joint Forestry Team for the National Association, and I'm also a commissioner on the Arkansas Forestry Commission. So it gives you just a little bit of background about who I am and everything. A quick update from the association. We've been very busy with some grants and program development. Some of our grants, we're still working on the grazing management for soil health. Got to move my notes over, I can see it here. So we're in the final stage of still the U of A division and field days and training on that. We're working on climate smart grants with U of A and Department of Ag. The Alliance, the Climate Smart program will be implemented in 6 counties in partnership with NRD and the local conservation districts. AACD will be providing training and guidance to the district technicians that will be hired for those practices. We're also working on applying for perimeter fencing for feral hogs. This will be a grant application we put into the National Association of Conservation Districts, really to provide funds for landowners to fence out feral hogs related to commercial hog operations, and exposure to African swine flu and other highly susceptible specialty crops. We're working on additional grants to retired educator to focus on envirothon and conservation education throughout the state. We've also submitted another grant to help with local lead conservation and to hire 2 contract work with districts on the planning and implementation and understand the goals of the local lead process that the conservation district is charged with under the Farm Bill. We're also working on training modules, dealing with some of the regulation and law changes, dealing with the election of director responsibilities and roles, as well as the appointed director responsibility and roles. And then also the district employees' responsibilities and roles. So those being 3 modules. And we're working in development with the Education Association too, as well as our directors. Some other activities that the association has is we're working on strategic planning workshop in December in Hot Springs that'll help us develop a 5-year plan of the association. We'll also be partly meeting with the Employees Association at that same time. Ray Ledgerwood will be brought in to help facilitate our planning. We are working on plans for the annual meeting. They'll be developing a date and location of our 2024 annual meeting. And then also we'll be having Assistant Chief Lewis, probably won't mess up his last name, Asprey with NRCS, on tour on several of the projects in Arkansas. I think he's going to be here for 2 days or 2.5 days, looking at different projects we're working on within our CS in the state. And that wraps up my report.
Any questions for John? John, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension.
Stay mic on.
And AEDQ.
Let's see what's here.
Good morning. As you see, I'm not Taylor Bosworth. I'm Stacey Wadsworth. I'm the interim associate director of Office of Water Quality at the Division of Environmental Quality. And just a brief update from us. We are working to prioritize all of those applications that we are receiving for those recipients of ARPA funds, and so that we can get those reviewed and issued timely. And we look forward to working closely with Natural Resources Division to make sure that those projects are going to be able to move forward. So that is really our update. And if you have any questions, I'm willing to take them. Otherwise, that concludes my report.
I'll just say too, that we appreciate that. We've got, just if y'all remember on the ARPA fund, there's a very hard deadline of when those funds have to be spent, about December, end of December of 26. So just trying to make sure that we can streamline all of our process. We can control kind of the giving them the money part, but then they've got to build, but they also have to get their permit. We appreciate the assistance from the environment.
What happens to that money if we send it to them and they don't get their project completed, their money spent by December 26th?
I assume it's going to be clawed back. I mean, that's my assumption. Now, there's a lot of time between now and then, so who knows if Congress will say, hey, we'll give an extension. I don't know that, but right now we're going off that it's a fast and hard deadline. And so we're trying to push the communities to get their projects going. So we've set internal deadlines for them. So when they have to go to bid, when they have to construct, so that they're moving, so that they have, a reasonable likelihood of getting constructed by the end of this.
Let's hope they have better luck getting pipe and parts and.
There's lots of things that we can't control, and so we just have to do the things that we can control and try to help them as much as we can and set the milestones for them. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gowan from UAPB.
He's here.
Oh, hello, Barry.
I'm here, president and accounting board, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Darn, nice to see you online. Nice to see you in person.
I think I look better. Fine.
No, I think you look fantastic.
I'm used to being very informal, but I'm Bruce McGowan, the interim dean for the School of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Human Sciences at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And so there's an old adage that goes, if you want to go faster, travel alone. But if you want to go farther, bring others along with you. So our relationship with the commissioners is one that I would like to see go forward. And along with that, I'd like to bring others with me. So I brought with me, if you permit, I brought with me today 2 friends and stakeholders of the university, Mr. Johnny Pettis and Mr. Luigi Campos. And our mission at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff as a land grant institution is basically the third. It's basically to carry out our land grant mission, same as University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. carry out a land grant mission to provide excellence in teaching, research, and extension and outreach to our stakeholders. And so I want to introduce you to them today because I want to give you somewhat of a feel about what we do. We're not just about academics. We're about doing research that impacts agriculture, extension, taking the technology and the transfer services out to the farmers, large or small. And so I want to preface this presentation. It's going to be short, but I want to preface this presentation with that because I wanted people to know what we really do. We serve. And so I passed around a flyer this morning. The university is having its 2003 annual field day event. And this is where we bring farmers, the general public, agencies, federal agencies, state agencies out, and we talk about climate smart conservation practices. And I know all of you have heard of this being mentioned. Secretary Vilsack at USDA, of course, is putting out, I've been listening to the reports and looking at the finances and all of that. But there are some finances at USDA now that I think Arkansas ought to get the lion's share of. And so we're eagerly beating the bushes, creating partnerships with other universities and federal agencies, state agencies, to make sure that we get some of that lion's share. And so the last few weeks or so, I think the last meeting, I talked about the Deputy Undersecretary of REE, that agency. She actually came to Arkansas to talk to different entities. The first stop, of course, was at UAPB. And then the next day, I think, Chris, she was at Stuttgart. And so that's not by accident. That's because there's some interest in the state of Arkansas in terms of accessing some of the funding from USDA and its billions of dollars. So our field day event is coming. I wanted to just give you that colorful flyer to invite you out to the field day event. I think one of our partners, Mike Sullivan, is going to be the keynote speaker, the luncheon speaker. So feel free to come out to Lonoke, Arkansas, and to our Lonoke farm, which we have about 871 acres of farmland. It's actually a wetland, and we do we plant row crops. We have a forestry demonstration site. So we're trying to do a lot of things there. We also are the curator, if you will, of the tall native prairie grass for the state of Arkansas. So we want to create a restoration opportunity for the state. And these are some of the things that we've been talking about before, Chris, Mike Sullivan, and some others. So we'll also be having another event on October the 5th. That would be our Aquatic Sciences Day, where we also have a Center of Excellence for Aquaculture and Fisheries on the campus. And so we'd like to invite you out there. These are just opportunities that you can come and share and be part of what we have been celebrating for the last 150 years. So I wanted to let you know about that. And the last update in terms of events, we will be having our annual field day, annual Rural Life Conference. We've been sort of putting it off because of COVID over the years, but this is sort of our culminating event where we have over 500 participants who come and do exhibits, talk about climate smart practices, the challenges of being in a rural state, if you will. So That would be, there are 2 dates that we sort of reserved, February the 23rd and March the 8th, 2024. Our co-sponsor would be the Arkansas Farm Bureau. So we'd love to see you all out. I'll be getting more information out to you on that. So I wanted to introduce 2 friends and stakeholders of the university. Again, Mr. Johnny Pettis and Mr. Luigi Campos. And they want to take about 3 minutes of your time to talk about some of the things that we think would be helpful to the state and to our local farmers and to and we really want to build an economic engine or enhance the economics for farmers and for municipalities. So I think Mr. Campos certainly he's a researcher and inventor, and he wants to share with you some of the things that he thinks would be beneficial to the state and to the commission.
Hello, everyone. I'm bringing to you today. I'm the vice president of 185. We basically developed a cable management system conduit that we were using on cell phone towers to go 350 air. We managed to retrofit it to become a vertical hydroponic, agroponic, or agro mining system if you wanted to. And we don't have any limitations. We can include about 32 acres to 128 acres into 1 acre of farm, which can allow a lot of farmers to go, if you need to grow mushrooms, you can grow mushrooms. If you want to grow peppers, you can grow peppers. If you want to do your typical lettuce farming, root vegetables such as beets, radishes, anything that we've been testing on, strawberries, we can do it year round. So there's no limitations there's no a system worldwide that I'm aware of at this point that's capable of playing in 4 different industries at the same time and allowing people to have so many options. Kids can grow their own vegetables in school. They can learn biology, chemistry, water, soil. So if you're a farmer that's traditional and used to doing soil, you can grow things in soil as well. And we can make the pipes bigger. We own the patents to the technology. It was made here in Arkansas. So we're trying to make Arkansas the leading industry to take over the world pretty much. But we need a lot of help.
The next California.
That too. But we've been working on getting the patents for Canada, the European Union, and Mexico. So as soon as that is approved, it's gonna be a pretty strong force to collaborate, and that's where UAPB has been a key player to help us. Let's do this, let's go on that route. They have all the knowledge and technical expertise that have made it really easy to move forward. And if you guys want to look at it, I will leave it somewhere for you guys to take a look later. But we don't have a limitation, as you can look at all the systems in the market. They're set points. We don't have any set points. You can go from paper plants to anything you want, flowers, and year round. So I hope, we look forward for you guys to get into this.
So with my ignorance, how does that work?
So we have a lot of different toys, and you can go into our website, 180pipe.com. But if you wanted just one pipe, they're coming to 5, 8, or 10 feet tall. And you can actually put in a 5-gallon bucket and grow 16 plants if you want it in your backyard. And all you do is you grow 16 different type of plants with 5 gallons of water on a 45-day cycle. So if you're doing traditional soil farming, for example, 1 row of 50 feet of lettuces, you probably grow around 100 lettuces in that 50-feet row. By going vertical, you can grow around 1,600 plants and using the same space. So now your little farmer that doesn't have those amount of acres around a state or doesn't have that financial options, only needs 1 acre to compete against major farmers, and you don't have to grow the same thing. The beautiful part about this is that you're not limited to, when you think about hydroponics, you think about lettuce, leafy greens, that's all everybody's doing. We've been able to do mushrooms out of these. You just change the substrate, put it inside, and then now you're growing mushrooms year round. radishes, red beets, and they were coming out massive, pesticide free. So that's a different game changer when it comes to what you're eating every day, what your kids are eating in the schools, and giving back to the community. So the difference between this system is that you can set them up however you want in a greenhouse and grows. Single unit, you can cut the conduit anywhere. We've been joking about breaking the Guinness World Record because we know we can go 300 feet in the air. Imagine that one of these days, once we get all the things together, the amount of publicity that can bring to the state, like the tallest hydroponic system in the world. Right now, the biggest one is 100 feet. And I'm actually a wireless engineer, and I've done a lot of cell phone tower work. And we have plenty of locations in the state. So if we do the marketing right, we have the centers right, the professionals going, I think this will be a big game changer for precision agriculture. And it's never been seen before, so it's brand new technology. The best part is that you can customize the color for people who like things different. And maybe since pink, the pipes white, breast cancer. Make it more customized to what the people want. It's a good part. You guys have any more questions?
Is there a special application? You have farmers in here, I think. Is there a special application for specialty?
Yes, so we can do a lot of specialty crops. We've been even testing with some row crops, not to scare anybody, but we won't go on that route right now. But we've been able to even grow rice out of the systems too, going vertically. And we noticed that we have 90% less pests to deal with by going vertically on a 1 foot space. We've been able to grow, I have more pictures I can show everybody so you can see it later. But like I said, we were able to do mushrooms, and one side we were able to do pink oyster, and the other side we were able to do lion's mane without touching each other. So for the mushroom industry, that's a big deal when they have to use all these plastic bags that they have to dispose and trash at the end of the harvest. Now, just my suggestion from this testing was stick to one kind of mushroom because sometimes there's cross contamination. But for example, in that industry, they can use the soil, take the soil out, reload more soil and keep farming so there's less trash put into the environment. Or if you get very technical, as we continue to work, that's what we're doing with UAPB, you can use the CO2 gases from the mushroom farm into your greenhouses that you grow on your vegetables. So the beautiful part about this is that your typical small farmer that had that one greenhouse is usually limited to grow lettuces, for example, right now, hydroponically in horizontal tradition. But now one row of these will pretty much eliminate the entire greenhouse. So now their production is a lot more inside that greenhouse. And they don't have to be specific to one crop. They can grow lettuce on one side, veggies on the other. It's open to endless options. And it's been a very successful test. We've been able to reduce the growth cycles by 35 to 45 days, depending on the project. Dahlias, I don't know if you guys are familiar with dahlias, some of you flower lovers. You have to buy those big bulbs. We've been able, and that take almost 6 months, 8 months to start producing nice, pretty flowers in a good size. We've been able to do it from seed to harvest in 45 days, 4-foot plants producing a lot of flowers indoor. No pests, no ant, nothing destroying. So there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of research. Agro mining is one big thing that we're trying to work on it, where we can harvest nickel out of plants. But the nickel that gets harvested from the plants is around 90% pure extract versus what you get from the mine. So we're doing some experiment, it's working on that. It's a different industry, so we're not limited to your traditional leafy greens that everybody thinks hydroponic lettuce. No, there's a lot more options out there.
And it's 185.com.
I'll pass this around so you guys can take a look. Thank you for your time. Very interesting.
That concludes the last presentation. It might be. All right, we've got a USGS.
Good morning, everyone.
some slides, but I'll wait for a moment, but I'll also put a plug in for, UAPB's field day. I'll be out at our groundwater well on your campus, so next Friday, if you feel like coming out, feel free to come by and, we can show you one of the USGS wells that we have out on, their farm. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Laura Roll-Whittle. I am the Hydrogeology Studies Section Chief of the Hydrologic Decision Science Branch of the U.S. Geological Survey, which is part of the Lower Mississippi Gulf Water Science Center. I feel like I just threw a whole lot of words out to you guys. But essentially, I'm part of the groundwater branch, and I am at the office locally here in Little Rock. So we are a 5-state center between Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama, focused on surface water, groundwater, water availability in all aspects. And we are the science branch of the federal, one of the science branches of the federal government. We're non-regulatory, and so we have a lot of cooperators, and that's what I wanted to report on today with our cooperative program, specifically looking at the groundwater program in Arkansas. So the USGS, in cooperation with the Arkansas Natural Resource Division, collects data on a lot of different aspects. So from surface water to groundwater to water quality and water use. We collect that data to be able to answer questions about that pertain to each of these units. And today, I'm going to be focusing in on groundwater, but at future meetings, I'd be happy to talk about surface water or water quality. We have Dr. Pinheiro in our local office, and she's done some machine learning projects on water quality in groundwater quality in Arkansas, and is also working on a machine learning modeling to look at the lithium availability, which is a commodity right now in southern Arkansas. We do collect a lot of data throughout Arkansas, and with Natural Resource Division, a lot of that ends up in products, reports, maps, but a lot of that data also feeds into some of our water use and groundwater models, which are ultimately tools to help make more informed decisions about our critical natural resources. So I wanted to highlight where we are collecting some groundwater data. This is, I have two maps here. The one on the left shows our NRD cooperatively funded real-time water level wells that we have in place. And so we have instrumentation in these wells that measure water level changes every 15 minutes, and then transmits it, and it is publicly available online. So you can go look at a well and see what the current water level is and how that compares to past records of water level as well. And you can see that we have, it's distributed around the state. There are a few more, but NRD primarily funds most of them. Like I said, this is a real-time network where we're constantly collecting data, and we have a historical record of data as well. On the right-hand side, we also do what we call our synoptic surveys, and this is where the USGS, the Natural Resource Division, and a few other cooperators get out, and kind of like ants all over the state, we go out and do discrete water level measurements. So we go out and collect over 300 water level measurements. And this one in particular is the Mississippi River Valley Alluvial Aquifer, the alluvial, as a lot of folks refer to it. And so every fall and spring, we collect over 300 water levels, kind of a snapshot in time. What is the water level currently at that location? And then we also do that in the spring. And so you end up the pre and post growing season, just to give us an idea of what that is. And it has a much larger distribution than you can see with the real time. One of the benefits for the real time is that it does show responses to stressors, whether maybe we're in a drought, so higher temperatures, less water, or also it can show stressors to human-made, like pumping of the aquifer as well. the discrete measurements have a wider distribution, and it's really a good snapshot of what is currently happening at this point. I will also note, because I put here, this is the alluvial aquifer, we also sampled the Sparta every other spring, or excuse me, every other spring, and then we have some of the smaller aquifers on a rotation as well. And ultimately what these help us answer is how much water is available, and how can we use this data again in this water use model and the groundwater flow models to be able to predict into the future based on impacts, so droughts, climate change, more pumping, what could happen and how much water would we have available in the future as well. So I wanted to just show you very briefly what, if you were to go online, and we have a mapper where you can actually click on some of these sites, and I promise I didn't plant this, but I happened to pull up the UAPB well in Lone Oak, and you can see that we've got record since 2007 on the horizontal axis, and depth to water level in the vertical axis there. And you can see changes through time. And again, I wanted to reiterate with this data, it's really great because you can see the seasonal fluxes that you would have naturally or throughout the growing season, as well as responses to pumping and other stressors that we might see. And you can also see the long-term trends in the water level throughout that record as well. Thank you, Megan. So a lot of that data, we collect it, and then what does it mean and where does it go? So part of that gets put into what we call potentiometric surface map, which is essentially a water level map for a particular aquifer. So we produce, on the left here, we have Sparta, and then on the right, we have the water level maps for some of our critical groundwater areas, and that's what is designated in those different colors. But it can help us see changes from year to year within an aquifer system. It does serve as a snapshot in time, so we can look back at the historical record, and these are also published and publicly available online.
Oh, you can click. Okay.
Thank you. So I also wanted to mention we have some water use meters. So the others were just water level. This one is actually an impeller in the pipe, and it does a number of rotations, which we can then correlate to gallons per minute or acre feet of total usage throughout a season, if we're interested. And so you can see on the right the distribution of those real-time water use wells that we have with NRD, and the distribution of those. And again, these are the real time, so they're transmitting data every 15 minutes. And I'll try to go to the next slide. It worked again. But this is a particular water use well that we have in Chico County, Arkansas, which is down here on the southeast corner. And you can see from the picture, it's growing cotton there, and got the field outlined, so we know we have data on the size, we have data on the crops from year to year, which is very helpful in terms of delineating and understanding how much water is used based on what type of crop you have. We also have on the right, which I have on the next slide, I'll blow up so you can see that a little bit more. But we can look at how much water we are using, but also how much precipitation we're getting. So we can correlate those two as well. And that's what we've got right here. Is this is a hydrograph of irrigation water use and precipitation. So on the left side axis, it's counts, and if you remember, it's an impeller, so it's like an odometer, one of the old school odometers that, you know, just counts the number, and then we would take that and change that into gallons per minute. And so just to give you an idea, the 350 is about, at this well, about 900 gallons per minute. So that's kind of what they were aiming for when they did turn on their pump. So the blue is showing the rate or count with the pump. So when they're turned on, you see a peak, and then when it's turned off, it goes back down to the baseline. We also do have a cumulative, the cumulative information so for the whole season as well. And then the precipitation is in red, and that can be read on the right side axis over there, and this is through time. And so this is just a little snapshot of just the information that we're able to get from these water use, real-time water use wells. And you can see that when this red line is flat, means we're not getting any precipitation. And you can see during those times we tend to turn, you know, you can see that we're seeing them turn on the pumps to be able to water their fields. And then we've got some rain events, these little jumps in the red line. And then again, it flattens out and we can see that the pump was turned on multiple times there, probably because it was a critical time and they need water for their crops. And then again, we see rain and after that, no water usage for a little bit. So this gives us a lot of information in terms of understanding that relationship between precipitation and pumping and water use habit. So not necessarily just assuming that when it rains, you know, they're not going to turn the pump on, or how long after rain would you need to turn on the pump based on, you know, maybe other climate factors as well. What's also nice about this is that it gives us a much more detailed information and about water use, rather than saying for the whole entire year you use this many acre feet. We can now say, you know, for this month you used this much and on this type of crop. So it gives us a lot more information that we can then put into our models to then you know, scale this up to, rather than just one farm, we can now apply this to an entire region based on, you know, pulling in information about that region, just to help people make decisions about these water resources. So this is where the modeling part of the talk that I've got some slides on. And so this is up at the top, it says aquaculture and irrigation water use model. And so this was the model I was mentioning, that where we're using the real-time water use data that we have, and pulling it in with a number of other information. So agricultural acres, information about climate, so temperature and precipitation, soil properties, because that also has plays a role in water use. That's the data we've collected, the crop-specific irrigation rates, the amount of irrigated lands, and ultimately what we get is an estimate. We can kind of have this nice large map, rather than just having a few dots where we know how much we used. We can have this map that covers an entire region and gives us an estimated water use for aquaculture and irrigation within that region. So this is a very large region. This is the Mississippi alluvial plain, which is kind of the extent of that alluvial aquifer. But we can also look at critical groundwater areas within Arkansas. So we've got the Grand Prairie and Cache. I've kind of pulled that out here, and you can see the map for that. The hotter colors are more water use. The cooler colors are less water use. But what's also neat about this is that we can pull it out and look at the water use through time based on a particular crop. So catfish, corn, cotton, other rice and soybeans within those particular areas, which I think would be very helpful in knowing this information. So the that was a water use model to be able to give us the information and even, you know, potentially predict into the future, what would water use needs be based on crop type and amount of land, and you can kind of put in all those factors. Well, we also have a groundwater flow model, and this groundwater flow model came about because you know, there's been several iterations at the USGS of these groundwater flow models, but we're updating it because we now have greater modeling capabilities and a lot more information and data to be able to model the groundwater within this region. So the concerns about the declining groundwater levels within this larger area, because of it is so agriculturally focused and uses a lot of water. Just thinking about the sustainability of that resource in the future was the impetus for, you know, us taking on this groundwater modeling. This is part of the larger Mississippi or USGS MAP projects, and so MAP is Mississippi Alluvial Plain. This was a congressionally funded project where we collected a lot of data, including airborne electromagnetic data over kind of the entire gray region right there, which can essentially the LIDAR for underneath the ground. So it really gives us a better idea of what the geology and the layers are beneath the surface. So that project, we were wanting to quantify the groundwater system within that region, as well as will the response be to any future development within that region. And so I've got the larger one here, but what's nice is that we have this larger model, and that provides what we call the boundary conditions, or the basis for inset models. And those inset models we can tailor to a particular region. And so we have two inset models in Arkansas. We've got the Cache River and the Grand Prairie in these critical groundwater areas, where we are taking a deep dive and really trying to understand the groundwater flow in these regions, as well as, you know, can we take in certain scenarios to predict what might happen in the future and water availability in the future. I should limit this to water only. So these are all the data sets that we're pulling into this model, and it's a large, complicated slide, but the main things I want to kind of highlight are, we had a lot of new data that we've collected, and we're pulling into this groundwater flow model. You know, elevation is kind of the typical one, but we've got the water use model that we're pulling in. We have some surface water aspects of it as well. We've got estimated recharge. We've got that airborne survey that I mentioned, and the output ultimately can help us determine, you know, try certain scenarios, like if the conservation efforts, if we did this percentage of conservation efforts, what would it look like? If we did, you know, temperature were to increase, what would it look like? If water use were to increase, what would it look like? And so we can, you know, test all of these scenarios, and we're working with our cooperators like NRD and some other folks around within the larger map area to specify for those areas, what are the scenarios that you'd like to run and what's of importance to you. The other thing, last thing I want to point out about this is that this is also a living model, and it's designed and coded that way to be able to bring in new data as we get more data. Because a lot of the models in the past were kind of a static snapshot, like we did the model and this is your answer. But what's nice about this and the way it's built is that as we get more information in the future, we can pull that information in and rerun the model, and it will put out you know, whatever scenarios we want it to in the future, which is a really nice benefit of this. And this was just highlighting that with the climate models are forecasting, and this is kind of two different scenarios, but just an increase in temperature, whereas the precipitation on the right isn't quite as clear. There's not a clear trend. And so with increasing temperature, there's going to be greater evapotranspiration and, water, crop demand for water. So it's certainly something that we need to think about and to be able to maintain this resource. Another, only a few more slides. Probably won't talk too much longer. But the cash groundwater part of the model, we also have a water budget for an area. And so this really kind of puts in all aspects of, if you think of all things water, if you were to be in one area, what factors are at play. And generally on this graph, anything above 0 and positive numbers are contributions or inputs into the budget. And then anything below that line, which you can see in the purple and mostly green there, are outputs or you're pulling water out of that system. And so what we can see with, and this is specifically for the cash, that as and the different contributions to it is that, so the purple is pumping, and it could be agriculture, irrigation, municipal, we're pulling water out of the aquifer, and where above that line kind of tells us where we're getting it from. So let's just look over, maybe on the right-hand side, you can see a thick green, so unconfined storage. So that's telling us we're getting it from the alluvial aquifer or unconfined aquifer. We're also getting a bit from the yellow, which is stream, so stream aquifer exchange, so groundwater surface water interaction. We're also getting aerial recharge or the rain coming into the system. And then we've got the light blue is groundwater exchange with another aquifer in there. So we're kind of pulling water from the aquifer. So it does give you a good idea of where we're pulling our water from based on how much pump we have and then all of those other conditions. So it does give us a lot more information rather than just saying, I pumped this much water. And that's all we would know. But now we know how much did we pull from surface water? How much did we pull from how much did we get recharged from precipitation? We can pull in a lot more information on that. And hopefully, and that whole idea is to share that with water managers within this region. So the whole groundwater model is to support informed decision making and to try to answer questions for our cooperators and the public at large too. So the groundwater model, hopefully it would give ideas of what future groundwater levels might look like based on certain scenarios, what the impact of particular conservation efforts would be, what future climate impacts could be. So if it's temperature increases or decreases, how would we see that within our water resources, the impact of engineering scenarios. And so this might be some of the efforts like the converting to surface water or kind of impacts from things like that, which I know we have going on also in Arkansas. And then also the impact on the groundwater budget as well. One other thing I didn't list on here, but in doing this groundwater, it can also highlight areas where we might need more data to fully understand certain areas as well. So second to last slide. So where we are currently, we've developed this living model framework that incorporates data as well as studies. There's a lot of data that we've been pulling in and have a lot of different teams working on it. And the Cache and Grand Prairie inset models have been calibrated. And the next step is to start forecasting with the climate, which is ongoing right now this month, and then next month for those Cache and Grand Prairie areas. And then start pulling in those conservation scenarios and engineering scenarios, and maybe even integrate some of those scenarios too. So again, that's based on conversations with our cooperators. That's all I've got, and I'd be happy to take any questions. And I have some cards if anybody would like to contact me later. I'm happy to pass those out. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Circle back here to soil classifier program. Edgar online now.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I was not on earlier, but my name is Edgar Murziowski. I'm with I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Currently up here in Lincoln, Nebraska, doing some training and meeting this week. What we're going to visit with you today is about the Arkansas Professional Soil Classifiers, the licensing and that. But first off, I want to talk a little bit about the association, which is kind of the father, I guess, or was the host for the licensing board at one time. The association has been together since the mid-70s, I believe 1975 or earlier, probably actually a little bit earlier than that, because the licensing board started in 1975. It's a group of people interested in the classification of soils. I don't know if any of you have taken soils classes in college or other places, but one of the disciplines of soils is soil taxonomy, which is relating soils to different properties, so that when we look at soils, we can tell, hey, what are they good use for, or what, are there issues with wetness in these soils? Can these soils be used for septic systems or other land uses? And part of that is determining physical and chemical properties of the soil, so that we can tell the public what they really need, get the information that they need. So people trained in soils, soil science, and especially with soil taxonomy or soil genesis type classes, is important in knowing those type of properties for soil usage and such like that. So in 1975, a law was established that the Arkansas would have a soil classifiers license. With that, there were 3 members of from the board or from the Association of Soil Classifiers, 3 members from it that were registered soil classifiers, and then one person that was at large, and 1 from conservation district boards. So there was our 5-member board that managed the examination of soil classifiers, looked at credentials and so forth. Currently, we have about 35 registered soil classifiers in the state. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but a lot of these work with as for private people with doing septic systems, designing and mapping subdivisions. That's become, that kind of comes and goes. We're in an upswing of that, so there's a big demand for that type of work. So that's working directly with the health department as what they call a designated representative, if you've heard of that before. The other area that is legislated for soil classifiers is with DEQ, and that came about when the materials from the fracking industry back several years ago, they were wanting to put that to the ground, and so they developed a scenario where soil classifiers would go and look at the soils, make sure the soils were able to accept that type of sludge, and so that they wouldn't be a misuse or contaminations later down the road. So that's another area that soil classifiers will work, and we do get calls from that from time to time from people from other states looking for areas that they can do that. And then other areas which commonly soil classifiers work in is wetlands, and just other, where people need somebody to have, for land use issues and stuff like that. A lot of our people have worked in federal government, NRCS as soil scientists. SES back in the day was a big supplier of our soil science. So that has dwindled over the years, so we don't have as many in the federal sector as we did, say, the 1970s and 80s. Also, universities, state agencies have soil classifiers in part of their area and such. So it is a profession that's still viable, and we do have people wanting to come into that profession today. So we do have people that are wanting to get licensed for the state. So with that being said, through this last general set, I guess it was prior to this last general session, there's law put in that the soil classifiers board would be dissolved, and that duties would be brought over to the commission. And so the director and some of his staff and myself and Dr. Larry West met, and we kind of discussed some possibilities for discussion, or what the commission might want to do as far as giving exams. So what we thought might be best would be that we have the Association of Professional Soil Classifiers, which predominant amount of us are licensed, still utilize that. So maybe have up to 3 people from the association kind of proctored the exams for the board and present that to the board for approval, for the commission, excuse me. So with that, maybe we can have some discussion. If there's anything out there from questions from the commission board members, I'll be happy to address those. And Chris, if I missed anything, please let me know.
No, I mean, Edgar, I appreciate you just giving kind of a brief overview of soil classifiers. As Edgar mentioned, those duties to essentially keep and maintain and to certify folks now rest with this body. And so we're working with Edgar and the association to, one, keep all the records. And when somebody wants to test, they have a place to do that. And we have still a lot of work to do. We have to create a site, our website for soil classifiers. We got to make sure that everybody, keeps up their registration, those sorts of things. So this is really kind of the first step, but I was not very familiar with soil classifiers, and so wanted Edgar as one to come and talk to you all so that you had a better idea about who they are and then the uses of that particular certification across the state. So I think you did a good job on that.
Good. Any questions about that? All right, Edgar, thank you for that presentation.
Thanks.
Other business, we do need to establish a committee to recommend officers for 2024 term. I've talked to Commissioner Neil Anderson. He said he will head up that committee. So, I guess you will accept that. Is there any other business coming before the commission today?
I'd like to ask Debbie or Ryan, I don't know which one. Has there been any monies turned back in from the ARPA?
There has. So we had 2 water systems turn down their ARPA grant. And so you gave us the authority to move on to the wait list. So Cleveland County was the #1 on the water wait list. They were given an award letter for the only one we've done. Now we do have a few dollars that right now haven't been awarded because we've had some projects that have completed under budget. So those monies come back also, but not enough to make anyone new an award.
Mm-hmm.
The next time we anticipate this really occurring is, so they have until next March, end of March, to be under our notice to proceed to their contractor. That was one of the interim dates. Director Cole Glazier mentioned. So that's the next time we think we'll move to the wait list. But remember, we're kind of getting this area that even next March, anyone we move the money to will have to guarantee they can meet those deadlines. So it's gonna get very interesting. So some people on the wait list got loans from us through, as a matter of fact, Cleveland County got a loan in June, and that million will go to just lower the amount of their loan. So folks who did that have a better chance. You know, I just want to, we're gonna go through the wait list, but when we get to someone, if they can't guarantee hitting those deadlines, we'll have to move on down the wait list, simply because that issue we talked about earlier. If they're not done by the end of 2026, there's a chance that they'll have to owe a bill and we won't have money to give them anymore. Because we're not giving it to them until they incur it, and the feds are, you know, that could get pulled back. Now, if that date gets extended, we can look at that, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah, that's on the water side. Now, what about on the wastewater side?
On the wastewater, the only thing we've had is we've had a couple small projects, thousands, not hundreds, you know, $5,000 or $6,000. They're coming in, you know, they finished the project and they already had some money left over. Not enough to make an award yet. Now, at some point, we will award it no matter what it is, because we're gonna spend all 270 million of it, guaranteed. But we don't have enough yet to award anyone on wastewater. And so far, everyone went to June and got their funding in place and have accepted it. Now, whether there's still some out there that I think haven't turned it back yet, haven't decided to go forward yet, but until they, you know, tell us, we're kind of waiting on them.
Good, thank you.
Any other business? If not, can we, get a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Bye.
We stand adjourned.
Thank you.